When NATO leaders begin a summit today, this time's to be in Washington, but they'll do so with a backdrop of China's growing influence across the board. Cyber threats, support for Russia. Joining us now on all this is Kyle Bass, Hayman Capital Management founder and chief investment officer. Interesting piece. Kyle, good to see you. It's been a while. Interesting piece in the Journal. It's an op-ed, actually, that NATO's been doing a little bit better. Back in 2014, there were only a couple of countries that were spending 2% of their economy on defense. We're now up to 23 out of 32, but it's still only 2%. In this world, a lot of people say it should be at least 3. Where I'm going with this is that Stoltenberg, the gentleman now who is NATO Secretary General, says that the real problem with what's happening isn't even it's Russia, but it's really China. The chief enabler of Russia is China at this point. So, anything that NATO is facing, China is front and center.
Yeah, I think what's lost on many of the members of the general public is what's been going on in the South China Sea, especially near the Philippines, where the Philippine general, the lead general, drew a line in the sand 2-3 days ago, where he said if the Chinese boats attack his resupply missions to his outward posts near the Philippines, that they will respond proportionally, meaning that you're going to see a potential kinetic conflict here soon. China has already deployed the Shandong, one of its new aircraft carriers and the carrier strike groups, down to the Philippines in the southern part of the South China Sea. Now, remember, Joe, that's 700 miles away from China, and it's right off the Philippines coast. And China lost a contested court case in the International Court in The Hague, the International Maritime Court, saying that China has no claim to those islands that are right off the coast of the Philippines. So when you talk about NATO, Joe, and what percentage of GDP we're spending on defense, look, the U.S. is spending 2.9% of GDP on defense. During the Cold War, we spent anywhere between, call it 4 and 6. At the back end of World War II, we spent 47% of our GDP on defense in 1945. One could argue, with a ground war in Europe, with the Iran and proxy war against Israel and maybe anyone that's, let's just say, not Shiite Muslim, I think one could argue that we should be spending a hell of a lot more on defense right now, and NATO's catching up. And I think Europe's finally caught on. The U.S. is going to be spending more on defense. And, we sit at a hinge in history today, and we better catch up.
Yeah, in this interesting piece, I guess the Stoltenberg is talking about 40 billion euros a year baseline for Ukraine, and it's being sort of characterized as an insurance baseline level against the Trump presidency, because I guess NATO still thinks that Trump wants to, I don't know, even President Biden says, look what I've done for NATO, look at what this other guy has done. Journal points out that there are many European leaders that really almost seem like they think Trump is more dangerous than Putin, because he required a lot of these countries to actually pony up and get somewhere near 2%, and even 3% would be better.
Yeah, to say that Trump has any kind of comparison to Putin is just crazy. I think that whether Trump's tactics are seen as good or bad, he does have tactics. And you pointed out, Joe, that a number of the NATO members are now spending more than 2% on defense. Well, Putin's knocking on their door. And as we saw last night, Russia, took out the largest children's hospital in Ukraine. I differ from some people, I think, on the far right, where I think the Ukraine conflict is an existential crisis. It is democracy versus authoritarianism. We have to win that fight. And if you've noticed, the Biden administration began saying we'll never send medium and long-term missiles, and now we're sending medium and long-term missiles. It's really hard to do the right things early, because the right thing is the hard button. This administration hasn't pressed the hard button. They've only pressed the easy button. We didn't sanction Putin. We didn't touch his energy business. We didn't touch anything as far as the blood growing to the tumor of Vladimir Putin. We let the blood keep flowing. And we're doing so again in placating and appeasing China. And appeasing authoritarians or dictators has never worked. And we're going to realize soon that it isn't going to work. So I think that NATO sees what's coming. And I'm pretty sure that the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe is certain that this war is going to intensify.
The point you made last time is still kind of interesting. I don't know whether I was here, but I don't remember what you said. Real wages, just bringing it back home for a second in the election and everything else. A lot of people scratch their heads why people don't feel better about things. You say inflation, the way it's reported, doesn't really give you a clear look at how much real wages are actually down.
That's right.
How much do you think real wages are down since Biden took office, and that would account for why people don't feel flush in what seems like a good economy?
Yeah, that is a great point. When you hear the talking points, the administration, they like to talk about the economy and the economy kind of writ large, and that the numbers look fine. The problem is if you looked at the government's own index, the FHFA housing index is up 50% in 3.5 years. So let's just say the cost of dwelling, the cost of rent, the cost of purchasing a house has moved 50%. What do you think wages have moved in that time frame? I think real wages are down 25%, if not more, during this period, because the way that the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the way the Fed reports inflation is they use owner's equivalent rent. They do this crazy survey. They call 1,000 homeowners. And they say, if you were to maybe rent your house, how much would you rent it for? I mean, it's actually out of touch with reality, Joe. And it is designed to report a much lower number. Everyone that watches TV, everyone that spends $1, spends a real dollar. They don't spend a chain-weighted, inflation-adjusted dollar. I wish I could. I wish I could go spend one of those dollars. But the reason the electorates around the world are voting out the parties that presided over 40, 50% real inflation are because that is killing them. It kills the poor. It really hurts the lower middle class and middle class. It takes mobility away from them. And the rich end up with all the money. And so these elections around the world, whether you're looking at France, whether you're looking at the UK, or whether you're looking at the US, I believe they're about two things. They're about runaway migration and inflation. And that's that. And the incumbents will be voted out.
Well, it's a little weird because you point out we created 40% more money during the pandemic, but there's the key word, the pandemic. It was the incumbents that are being voted out. Weren't they just responding to something out of their control, the pandemic? There's inflation everywhere.
Joe, we added 40% more broad money to our system in 18 months. When you look at the way the world works, the world is priced in dollars. Whether or not transactions are settling in dollars, everything's priced in dollars. So we, as a country, the 18 unelected people that run the Fed and the person that runs the Treasury, created 40% more money because that was the response that they deemed necessary to kind of save our economy from collapsing during COVID. We didn't know what was going to happen when that disease moved over the rest of the world from Wuhan, China. We just didn't know. They didn't know. But if you remember, we had spending bill after spending bill after spending bill. I mean, thank God Joe Manchin was alive. We'd have another, $1.5 trillion, $2 trillion of gasoline thrown on this fire. They went incredibly overboard on the way up. And now they're not going to be able to take that much out on the way down before they're going to have to stop contracting the balance sheet and start expanding it again. So we exported like 50% inflation to the rest of the world, and we broke many of the countries that were already kind of moving along the bottom in the emerging markets. We broke them. And so the financial architecture of the emerging world hasn't looked this bad, call it since the end of World War II. And that's why we're not going to have some rapprochement or denouement of these conflicts. I think the conflicts are going to get a lot worse.